What do out-of-body experiences and dreams have to do with being able to point us directly to the non-dual self? Hi, welcome back to my channel. My name's Todd, and here we talk about non-duality and the mechanics of the appearance of reality. In today's videos, I want to talk about the concept of dreams and out-of-body travel and how those concepts and experiences, those appearances, can actually act as pointers directing us to the non-dual self. And to do that, I've created a few graphics and a video so we can more closely analyze these concepts and create the direct pointings so that there can be some sort of resonance from this video that will allow you to receive this message. So if we look over here, I've created this graphic of a dreamscape. So the intention of this graphic here is to be something of the nature of a dream. So if you imagine that or think about any of the dreams that you've ever had, think about the appearances within the dream. Who is the character that you're playing within the dream? Who is the token that you're maneuvering around in the dream? And is that really you? And if that token or that avatar is not really you, then who is the real you within the dream? Imagine for a moment that this avatar here is the person within the dream, and this entire field is the dreamscape within the dream. And so when we look at this graphic in the context of a dream, what are we really looking at? Are we looking at separate things that exist totally independently and sovereign within themselves? Well, it certainly appears like it could be, and it appears even more convincingly to the avatar if they've placed veils around themselves to forget that they're actually within a dream. And oftentimes, unless you're becoming lucid within the dream, that's the case. In the dream, you don't realize it's a dream until you wake up completely in your bed, and then you realize that you've been dreaming all along. So then what you could say is the level of consciousness or the level of remembering of the avatar or the consciousness that's taking on the perspective of the avatar will dictate how real this dream appears and how convincing this dream appears to the consciousness that is perceiving through this avatar. So imagine now in this scenario where there have been those veils placed over this avatar. So the consciousness that surrounds and resides within and permeates the avatar for the sake of creating experience fully believes that it is the avatar. It's taken on the idea and the identity of being the avatar. So what does that mean? That means that by default, by fully and convincingly believing within itself that it is a separate individual, it immediately takes on the perspective of living within a subject-object reality, a reality of separation. And so from that perspective, imagine that it then becomes time for the consciousness or the avatar to begin waking up to its true nature. What does that look like? Okay, so the consciousness within the avatar and permeating the avatar, it doesn't understand how it could be anything but the individual, the identity of that person, because that's all it's known. All its thought forms have been surrounded and fully involved in buying into the idea and the identity that it is this avatar. And the default byproduct of that belief, that intense belief, is a contraction of a lot of energy to surround the avatar, purely because of the belief of the consciousness within the avatar or surrounding the avatar dictates the movement of energy. And because it's so believed and bought into the idea of being the avatar, the energy contracts, and that adds to the even more convincing experience of being trapped within a body. And that's why our bodies can sometimes, especially in the early phase and actually all throughout an awakening process, it can really feel like we're almost a prisoner within the body. It's simply because the contracted energy from our belief of being the separate individual has created the experience of almost barriers surrounding the body in the shape of the body. Because of that contracted energy, that's the experience, that felt experience within the physical avatar. And so the avatar here in this situation now comes to a point where the seeking energy for its true self reaches critical mass, and the drive upward, or the drive towards its true self, is now in full swing. It must know itself. It must know its true nature. And so it goes out searching for itself. Now, the question is, who is the truth of the avatar, and what is the avatar in itself? Well, if we look at the context of a dreamscape is nothing more than appearances of thought forms within your dream. So what is the avatar? Well, the avatar can't be any different than one of those thought forms or appearances, like a holographic appearance within the dream. As an individual, a sovereign being, the avatar doesn't really exist, aside from being just an appearance. It's like a prism of light or a hologram that the consciousness takes on as a perspective to view through and to experience a dreamscape through. So then what is the self? What is the one non-dual self? Well, in the context of the dream, the non-dual self isn't anything that appears within the dream. You could almost say that it is all of the dream and none of the dream at the same time, but it isn't fundamentally any of those appearances that appear. They are just appearances within the self. Anything that arises and fades or is perishable could never ever be the self, because the self is eternal, unchanging, unwavering, outside of time, outside of space. So you could say that this is all happening within the mind of the self, and in the context of the dream is happening within your mind while you're asleep. Who is the dreamer in the context of a dream? Well, in the context of this dream, obviously the dreamer is the one asleep on the bed. And the one asleep on the bed is creating the entire dream, and the dreamscape and all things that appear within the dream are happening within the mind of the sleeper on the bed. And so there's one mind in this graphic, for example, there's one mind dreaming. So just like when we dream, if we become lucid in the dream and realize we're dreaming, we realize we're actually asleep in our bed and we're not in anything that's truly real. And so as everything that appears is comprised of consciousness, like their thought forms, they arise and they fade like thoughts do. You could also take this dream as a direct pointer to your true nature, because first of all, you are not the separate self. The separate self can be seen as like a hologram or a construct or a thought form within the one mind, the one that exists outside of space, outside of time, the one mind. And this is also referred to as mentalism in the Hermetic principles, that there is one universal mind, and that one mind is taking on a perspective and a very unique expression called the soul, which is fractaled off and viewing through your current physical avatar, your prism of light, for the sake of having this type of experience on this planet in this physical reality. And this direct pointer and concept was also confirmed to me during an out-of-body experience, out-of-body travel that I had, where I left my body on the bed. I moved into my light body or soul body, however you want to label it, doesn't matter. And what happened was, because I shifted out of the current physical 3D frequency bandwidth and rule set that the physical body has, I shifted into a higher octave of frequency with a different rule set. It was much, much more like a dreamscape, in that everything manifested at will and in an instant. So everything manifested at the speed of intention. Intention was very, very clearly the number one driver of experience in that frequency bandwidth, where there are no more limitations of being within the physical body and being within the rule set of this earth game, let's call it, like the rule set of gravity, for example. It was very, very clear to me that even the light body that I was traveling in, it wasn't the fundamental core of who I was, and everything that was appearing within the experience that I was having out of body was also not me, because it was shifting instantly at the direction of my intention. And so that was a direct pointer for me, and a direct knowing that I was the one that was behind all of it, that I was the one that was behind the entirety of my experience in that realm or dimension. And it was very, very obvious that I was the no thing, the void that permeated all of it. And I was having this unique expression and perspective through my soul body as a vehicle to experience all of this. And that's of course not to say that there isn't a common structure for many perspectives of the one mind, many souls who can experience the same appearance within that dimension, just like in the earth experience. Many, many different fractals of the one mind, many different souls can experience the idea of going to London, the idea of going to Germany, France. There's a set creation or a set appearance there for us to experience within this construct. There was some sort of set construct I could explore and experience over there, but it was much more malleable. And in that dimensional frequency bandwidth, I was 100% in command and in control of that entire experience. If I wanted to fly, which I did, I just commanded it. I commanded to fly now, and I was immediately flying through the air just as an exact response to my intention. And so to illustrate a little bit more of the out of body state, not that it looked anything like this, but to illustrate, there's everything that appears, again, according to the Hermetic principle of vibration, everything is in motion. Nothing ever truly rests in appearance. And so you can see the field down here. This is kind of like the Matrix, where Neo starts to see through the field, and he can see that everything is appearing as one within his own consciousness. And so the soul body here has left the physical body, and it now has a much, much higher frequency and much, much greater command or authority over its experience, because time doesn't actually exist, and the experience of space is much, much more malleable. And so the experience of everything that appears within that field is able to be experienced at the speed of intention. Again, in that experience, it pointed me directly to the one self, the non-dual self that was the mind behind it all. And so even though there's still many, many veils that can still conceal the self from the self, it's a greater level of awareness, a greater level of access, and a much greater level of knowing and being of the one self, because as mentioned, all appearances really don't actually exist in base reality. They are just appearances that come and go and are perishable. That's how you know it's not the true self. And so if we go back to the original graphic here of the avatar, what is it that happens when the non-dual self is fully realized? The non-dual self is fully realized when it realizes it not only is the dreamer, it's been the dreamer all along, and it's never been the physical avatar, because the physical avatar doesn't actually exist. It never actually existed. And so that's what the uncompromising non-dualists talk about when they say that the idea of duality completely collapses in on itself, but then they follow up by saying nothing actually collapses, because all it actually is a fundamental and total shift in perspective. So nothing's actually happened except for a shift in idea or a shift in perspective, and there can no longer be an idea in existence that you are the hologram, that you are the appearance, or thought form within the dream itself. You are the dreamer. Another thing that the uncompromising non-dualists also say is that this isn't a teaching because there's no separate individuals where one could teach and one could be the student. It's only a resonance because it's like two fractals of the same mind, two fractals of the same void are resonating with each other to create a certain type of maybe a vibrational transformation in a certain way. Everything is energy, and so a vibrational transformation or transmutation needs to take place. And so a vibrational transformation or transmutation takes place on some level that can then filter down and displace the ideas of being the separate individual, because so much energetic momentum has been formed in that belief, so much energy has been contracted from the idea that's been harbored that you are the separate self for so long, that these energies need to be shifted, displaced, and transmuted back in to the non-dual self. So all energies that exist within the idea of duality need to be collapsed back into non-duality, into the true self, into the vibrational frequency of your soul. And so really what I hope resonates from this video in particular is the idea that there's certain experiences or appearances within the non-dual self that you could really dive deep and analyze and look into it and meditate on, and it will help lead you closer and closer to the core of the non-dual self, who you really are. Because when you analyze dreams, you realize that there's nothing within the dream that appears that could ever be you. You are the dreamer asleep on the bed, in the out-of-body state as well. Even though all appearances are much, much more malleable, the idea is that you're still the no thing, the mind behind all of it, because it's your intention that all appearances respond to within the dimensional space or dimensional frequency bandwidth that you're experiencing. And just because we're in this earth plane and there's certain experiences of limitation such as gravity, time, space, it doesn't mean that that's anything even close to base reality. The only real is the one self. So I hope you've enjoyed the video. I hope it's resonated. I would love to know what has resonated the most, what you would like to hear more of. But if you did resonate, if you did enjoy this, would love it if you subscribed so you can stay up to date with new releases. See you in the next one.